Again, Andrew Raymond Savage, 12 May 2016, Common Era. Back over to mirror wit or auto oration in front of a mirror, what have you. So much to put into that caliber. Well, from a psychological perspective, in terms of what some people would call like mere witchcraft, the basics, right? That when you're in front of the mirror, auto orating, you're feeding signals. You're sending signals back to your conscious aspect, your subconscious aspect, as well as even your unconscious aspect. That maintaining good form and auto oration in front of a mirror helps sharpen your faculties of reasoning, sense of knowing thyself. And well, from a psychological perspective, the basics do make sense in regards to the teachings of mere witchcraft or mere warlocking. And well, with that said, there's another thing in terms of paganism, right? Pagan is Latin for, okay, so yeah, P-A-G, tac A-N. A-N is the suffix of pagan, okay? And well, it doesn't mean civilian. Civilian's already a Latin word. Pagan, it's an imparter of someone that imparts programs, leaflets, newspapers, books, programs. That everyone that's ever handled paperwork and handed it off to someone else is guilty of paganry, technically speaking, as per classic Latin. If you say otherwise as a Vatican official, it's not your language to be condemning there. That you guys have already been found guilty of killing people that are the messengers. That paganry isn't witchcraft, or not necessarily witchcraft and not necessarily warlocking. That it's imparting the impartment of data, the impartment of learnings, of information. That essentially what the Vatican has been pleading guilty to over the last 2,000 years, I guess, is shooting the messenger. Wow. And then, all the retards, on the bandwagon of the child molesters known as the Vatican, going after witches and warlocks, have been pleading guilty to, harming people with wit, as well as tampering with the wrong lock. You see, there's a difference between a Morlock and a warlock. A Morlock is someone that wants more locks on their doors, bars on their windows, to hide inside because they're afraid. They have bad things coming their way. That's a Morlock. A warlock is someone that essentially, a grassroots aspect, someone that tries to prevent a war from even having to begin, by understanding everything from their crafts, the crafts of their friends, their circles, their associates, to in order to prevent wars from starting, as well as to know what falls in place if there's a deceiver among the ranks that tries to cross the wrong line. And so, essentially, everything that the Vatican's telling the world is just kind of like an open confession booth of just telling the world how guilty they are. That it's kind of like, it's really interesting that Judgment Day is upon them, and they're just being given this 80 years on average duration of a bad DNA trip, a bad dinucleic acid trip. Just confessing all their evil doings out in the open. And well, with that said, the Vatican is not a Christian organization. They don't understand what the Christalis effect is, nor do they remember the impartment of the Christalis effect story of how the Creator, when he saw how magnificent his creation was, pure salt just started running, not like just water, no, pure salt just started streaming down his eyes of joy. That it created all the salt and the verse That's the Christalis effect. It's part of the Christalis effect, in terms of the story of the Christalis effect. It's a very, lengthy story. And then you have, let me see here, Hallows Mass, October 29th, Hallows Eve, October 30th, and then Halloween. Those are old holidays that were adopted by the early church that the Vatican has destroyed. Hallows Mass, Hallows Eve, and Halloween are not just about the Mexican or Latino American equivalent of honoring the dead. Halloween's not the Day of the Dead. The Day of the Dead is the Day of the Dead. Halloween, it's Hallows Mass, Halloween, and Hallows Eve are about honoring the creation and the creators, the creations and the creators, the aspects of the creator and creation. The father, the mother, the child, the kindred spirits. It's very interesting that I was just like an infant or a toddler on the last time I celebrated Hallows Mass and Hallows Eve and Halloween there in the 3 days in Los Angeles. But it's kind of like the church got closed down for some reason, or bought out by Vatican sympathizers. And another thing is, another missing key there. I'm explaining what missing keys are right now. Another missing key is, the city that they're calling the Vatican over there, that wasn't originally called the Vatican. Prior to their idea of what the Crusades were about, back when knights wore Kevlar, blue jeans, Kevlar, cotton, full-scale Kevlar. The name of that city was actually called Amora of Italia, the city of love. You had Roma and Amora. And it's kind of like, everything that they put in those books there, regurgitating a stolen knight's tale, while just like locking up or hiding, trying to hide the credentium of true Christianity, of the Christalis Union. The Coven of Christalis, by turning it into a covenant. Everything that they're telling you these days is just deceit, regurgitated like a sloppy, chopped up leftover liver. That they have no understanding as to what the word Christ even means. And then simultaneously, they're saying that they need to do away with sorcery. Now, there's a Arabic word for what the Vatican's trying to subscribe as what the Arabic community refers to, but with sorcery, it's not deceit and what have you. It's understanding how to. I'm not going to get too out there, but when you do practice sorcery, you're supposed to understand what a crystal is good for, what a crystal ball is good for, what water is good for. That you're not supposed to be going around breaking very beautiful, immaculate-looking things. And with that said, let me see here. It's almost as if retards broke into the Coven of Christ churches, various churches of the Coven of Christ, and then started spelling it out that they're crooks, that they're deceivers. And it's kind of like, they're calling themselves a covenant. It's kind of like they're all missing their right eye in church, and they don't even get it, because it's not a coven, and they're saying it, that you're not supposed to be making a covenant, a pact of a covenant with Christ. You're supposed to be making a coven with Christ. You're supposed to be restoring your vows to the Coven of Christ. And that's another, speaking of vows, that's another missing holiday. Vow Day, back in the 1800s, was an international holiday. Maybe not celebrated by every nation around the world, but it was a day of restoring, renewing, affirming to, or reaffirming to sacred vows between yourself, your spirit, your soul, as well as your kindred folk, your kindred spirits, your kindred friends, and your community. Days of a day to remember to restore your vows to your covens, your family lines, your being with the blood, being a kindred spirit. And well, now it's like they're speaking in garble, and then they're just saying, no, that's our language, that's our language. Latin is our language. While they're saying Latin, and then they're missing all the things that I just, shelled out there. And they're not even pronouncing Latin correctly. They're calling it Latin, like in the Lat again. That's interesting. I guess they don't know why it's called Latin yet. Furthermore, they don't even know what old Latin even looks like. They either have pretty much they're well, that's just it. To get this across, that there was a cataclysm that happened once around the world where people were speaking Latin, and the thing is that they forgot how to write over time, over generations, because they started losing material to write with, and that they're not even actually writing Latin in its original script, its original font. That no offense to Phoenician, obviously, but the Phoenicians imparted the alphabet to the Latin community after, coming to a crossroad of imparting observance of customs, what have you, and teachings, that you guys are actually writing Latin in a Phoenician script, a late Phoenician script, not high Phoenician script, no, a late, as in a bridge, like semblance of Phoenician. And very interesting that there are so many retards and such high places with so far to fall.